Hello, my name is Cynthia and you are tuning in to AWANI Review. Joining me today is Simon Dill, Managing Director of Adobe Southeast Asia and Korea. He joins me from Singapore. Great to have you on the show, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Great to be here as well.
First off, how are you? Are things back to normal in the office now?
As normal as it can be. We've got about 75% space capacity, which we're allowed by the current restrictions, and it's in high demand most days of the week. So yes, it's pretty positive.
That's great to hear. I want to start by talking about Adobe. Of course, it's a company that has very strong identity. I think many of us in this generation grew up with the brand in some ways. If you have not used the Photoshop, you may have used the PDF, or you may have used Flash at one point. So if we can talk about the brand itself, where does it stand today? And when people talk about Adobe, what comes to mind and what is the mission or the story of Adobe that your company is trying to tell to people?
Sure. Well, I think people will recognize the Adobe brand because of what you've mentioned, our capabilities that have stretched back 40 years this year, actually, and 25 years here in Asia. And it's a very strong brand for creating digital experiences. That's been the consistent thing that Adobe has done for its 40 years of helping people to use software to create compelling images, compelling videos, good documents, and get all that done. And what's not known about Adobe is over the past 10 years, because of its own digital transformation, we've also had to learn how to do this thing called digital customer experience. And that's allowed us to build another business, which is all about helping other companies to do that as well.
Okay, now we'll get to that in a second. Looking at Adobe from a software company to a cloud company, and it has pivoted so well in the past 40 years, as you mentioned. Just wondering in your thoughts about, will Adobe reinvent itself? Do you see the need to reinvent itself when you talk about the kind of businesses that you're looking at?
Well, I think Adobe's already done a major reinvention, and that has positioned ourselves really well for the current reinvention or disruption that digital is causing all industries to go through. And so we see ourselves now as a really good case study for other companies to learn from as to how to manage change and make it sustainable with digital technologies and digital capabilities. So this word cloud can mean many things. And when I was learning about cloud about 11 years ago, when I worked for a more traditional software company, I used Adobe as my poster child because back then Adobe was seen as a first mover to do its transformation. Now, technically to this thing called the cloud, so using cloud services to run our software, but there's also a dimension of the business model, right? And the way that you deal with your customers as well. So we changed our business model to subscription, which meant that our revenues are more predictable, our money coming in the door was more predictable and regular. So that helped us with our cash flow, which made us a more sustainable business as well. But also we had to shift to being more direct to consumer, which a lot of brands are going through today as well. And that's very relevant. We've been doing it for 10 years. So it's all that experience and capability now that we can offer to other companies.
I do wonder about yourself, looking through your LinkedIn profile. You had over 3 decades of experience in the software business, interspersed with some years in venture capital before joining Adobe to manage the Southeast Asia business. What were the opportunities that you saw, especially for this region?
Yeah, look, I think the great thing about Southeast Asia is that over the 21 years that I've lived here, it's really grown in many dimensions. It's not just grown in terms of the population and the demographics of that population, as well as the middle class. It's also been unicorns in the startup space. It's been local companies going global, being very relevant, even in traditional industries like commodities and so on. Right, so there's a lot of global success stories which have been exported out of Southeast Asia. And this has really created a great environment for global tech to come into the region and also local tech to grow and be seen as world-class here as well.
Having the experience of being in a smaller, more fast-paced company and now in such a big company with so much resources at your disposal, if you can share with us the kind of management style and what are the lessons that you've learned from being in a VC and then going to a mega corporate company like Adobe?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I was working for a very small Israeli company back in the UK, which was acquired by a very large German company. And that's how I moved out here. And part of my success was embracing the scale of a large company. So coming into Adobe, it was not that much different in terms of what I understood, what Adobe was trying to do. And Adobe itself, as I said, right, it reinvented itself about 10, 11 years ago. So innovation does happen inside large companies, and large companies that manage it well benefit from it. I mean, Adobe has done very well in terms of going through that transition, being seen as a leader and coming out the other side as a very profitable company. In fact, just before COVID hit, Adobe exceeded my old employer in market cap, and it's significantly increased since because of the success of our current business model, which we went through and innovated on just over 10 years ago.
What is it about Adobe that how the way it's organized that allows it to innovate quickly, despite the different levels of hierarchy that you have in such a mega company?
Well, I think the first thing is a focus on the customer, right? And also keeping to our core mission. So regardless of the fact, we have 3 different cloud businesses as we organize things, but all 3 of them are about helping people to create digital experiences and manage those at scale. So if it's our creative cloud, we have the Photoshops and all the other capabilities there for people to do great images and all this kind of stuff. And if we talk about innovation and what the latest buzzword of the metaverse is, a few years ago, we acquired a small company which does very impressive 3D modeling and rendering. So you can make something look really real, even though it's completely digital. And that is now part of all of our creative cloud capabilities, and people are creating beautiful 3D images, and some major brands are actually using that to in their e-commerce to help people to see a lovely example of their physical product, but it was completely created digitally. Like Coke, for example, launched a new seltzer last year, and everything was designed using 3D tools. None of it was in a traditional manufacture and take photos and so on. So you see that capability of our traditional business being very relevant now to businesses. And that's just one of our clouds. Then the other 2, one around PDF, of course, is helping businesses of all sizes, and particularly SMEs. And in Southeast Asia, we've seen during COVID quite a big demand for companies using our electronic signature solution, Adobe Sign, along with the PDFs that go with that to make their businesses able to continue in a remote sense. And then we have all this brand management, experience management that I've talked about, which is, again, taking that content that's been created and delivering it through your channels of engagement. But most importantly, measuring that interaction and personalizing the experience for the consumer so that the consumer is more likely to engage with your brand, convert into being a customer, and stay with you and stay loyal.
You touched a lot of interesting points that I want to dive deeper, things like metaverse, digital economy. But I do want to focus on, you mentioned Creative Cloud, one of your 3 cloud segments, which makes up the bulk of the revenue to the group. There are many competitors out there offering similar web design tools. Within the professional UI, UX designer segment, you have companies, for instance, like Figma or Sketch, which have been, experiencing quite big growth. What is Adobe currently doing to differentiate itself and to stay ahead of the curve with competitors like that coming up?
Well, we always focus on our community of existing customers and how do we continue to deliver value to them so they stay loyal to us. At the same time, we have been making our products more accessible. So recently, for example, about 6 months ago, we launched our Creative Cloud Express. Now, this is geared to making the assets that are created with our heavyweight Creative Cloud tools, which is usually a desktop download because it's very powerful capabilities, right? That's usually a professional or a prosumer who's doing something, say in Photoshop, right? But the image that they produce, if it's being used in a business context, then there's lots of other people that would want to be involved in that creative process. Might be someone in branding, someone in marketing that needs to take a look at it, review it, comment, and so on. So this workflow, this integrated workflow, and the ability to do that as quickly as possible with the minimum of fuss is important. So we see our Creative Cloud Express and some of our companies that we've acquired, like Workflow and Frame, for both video and content management, bringing a whole new dimension of productivity gains to those people who are involved in the creative process. Because it all comes back to these days, again, companies going direct to consumer, they need more digital content to engage with people through these digital channels. So there's a lot more demand for content creation. So we're helping our community of creators to plug into more of these business workflow processes, and also allowing the business people to access these assets without becoming experts in Photoshop. So that's really, it's sort of, making a bridge, making it more accessible, sort of democratizing this creativity to some extent. And the key thing is that it's all integrated. You're not sending a file on email or sticking it in a different delivery service and losing track of it, which gets in the way of productivity and efficiency.
So real-time collaborative cloud experience.
Yeah, and single versions of the truth. And of course, it's also important when you think about the provenance of things, the audit trails of this work, particularly from a creator's point of view. And again, touching on the metaverse, if you have a creator of digital content, they want to be sure that they're recognized as the creator and that they have the rights as the creator to that. And that's also something which we're working on with authenticating the creator credentials in the world of NFTs, for example.
Okay, now, well, since you've talked about Metaverse and NFT, I'm inclined to go there first. So let's talk about that. How is Adobe preparing itself for the Metaverse? Do you think it will take off in a big way? And when will that happen? I mean, we're hearing so much about it, but what's your take?
We definitely see that the metaverse is not just getting a lot of attention from the Web3 and crypto crowd, but also from major brands looking at taking it seriously. And arguably the gaming industry has been doing a lot of similar things already. Now, a lot of customers in the game, we have a lot of customers in the gaming industry using our tools to create those digital experiences. And we have a lot of major brands doing similar kinds of things. If you kind of look at the NFT part first, and a lot of NFT images are created using Adobe tools. I mean, if you go to one of our websites, is called Behance, which is our digital community of creators. And there are hundreds of people on there already minting NFTs and showcasing their work. So it's obviously that a lot of our community has stepped into this. To my earlier point about, first of all, the creator economy, right? People creating these NFTs, there's this whole area of possibility of people minting NFTs that they didn't create. So we've worked with some of the platforms to be able to add creators' credentials to the NFT so that they are recognized as the creator of that. And then when it's minted, then their rights to any royalties and so on in the minting process forever are included in this. So it's one example of us really working with one part of the metaverse. The bigger picture that we see, though, is that there are these platforms. We don't see ourselves as a platform of the metaverse, whether that is Meta or Microsoft, or it's one of the gaming companies, or probably many different islands. But what we do see is that we have all these capabilities for people to create the very rich experiences inside these platforms. As I mentioned earlier, our 3D capabilities are already used by gamers to really make surfaces look like leather or cotton or skin or hair, and the lighting perfect so it looks photorealistic and you feel like it's realistic. And people already do that in the 2D metaverse, right, on a screen like we're using now, accessing a gaming platform. The kind of fully immersive virtual reality, I think the hardware is probably going to take a while to get there. But obviously, we see ourselves as the providers of the tools to all the people who want to create these environments, and also going back to the workflows and everything to get that content into it. So it's just, to us, the metaverse is one more channel to add on to all the other channels where our creators create content today.
Is Adobe investing heavily in providing more of these kind of tools for the VR, AR, augmented reality, and metaverse in the coming years?
Yeah, so we already had an augmented reality tool called Adobe Aero, which is in this family that we talked about, the metaverse. We just had a major event summit about a month ago where we announced our metaverse focus, and we now have a specific area on our website explaining everything we do in the metaverse. But there's definitely a place there in terms of the augmented reality as well as virtual reality, and how we're starting to plug ourselves into all of those different roadmaps.
Where do you see as the quickest applications of a metaverse that will take off in a big way, that looks more exciting to you?
Well, I already see examples of it in e-commerce, for example. So if you look at the Nike by You example, where you can go and customize your sneaker, and then when you click your, yes, I'm happy with my options, it will produce a very photorealistic rendition of your shoe that you've designed. And I've done this. I've got a pair of sneakers that I bought for that capability. And it's a really clever use of this kind of example of making something photorealistic, but it's a purely digital creation. Similarly, augmented reality on Amazon, for example, we've helped them with our 3D capabilities to put furniture that's really photorealistic into an augmented reality app that you can then put in your living room, right, for example, and go, oh, you know, I've got this piece of furniture that looks about right, and so I'll go and buy it, rather than buying it and find that it doesn't work and returning it. So there's even an element of sustainability in some of this augmented reality, which you could link it to as well. So those are good examples of where people are doing something in the real world and in a business sense. And then there's lots of examples of people looking at augmented reality for tourism, you know, virtual tourism or enhanced tourism experiences, like the Mandai group here in Singapore that we're working with. And it's things like that that are starting to give people the skills and the understanding, which are helping them to decide, is this commercial ready? Is it for us, and where can it be applied in that context?
You mentioned earlier about personalization, which is something that I'm quite interested to talk about, because personalization is the name of the game. You know, we want customized tools so that it gives us the best experience. How is Adobe helping users as well as companies to drive a more personalized experience?
Yeah, we do it in a few ways, actually. One of the things, as I said, when Adobe did its own transformation to move to this direct to consumer relationship using what was called the web, right, and is now called just about everything, we learned that we needed to not only have a website that customers would come and find and do some advertising to get them there, but we actually had to understand when they got to our website or websites, we have 65 today, why are they there, what are they looking for, and where are they going, and where are they having problems in that process? So this is all customer journey management. And when you get into the detail of that, you realize that there are different customer journeys in your business, and you can focus on those customer journeys and the science of measuring how the customer starts in a particular point in the journey and then progresses through and exits. And you can start to define the measurements, KPIs, to assess, and that feeds into the way that you change your business. You feed your business, you guide your business. Hey, look, it looks like customers are coming to the site, but they're not really having a good experience when they do our trial. So why is that? Let's dig into that. Oh yeah, look, they're not converting because there's these problems, right? Let's fix those. And then Once you get that, they'll move towards buying something. And then you say, okay, well, in our case, we had originally a lot of existing customers we converted to our new subscription model and products. When we acquired a lot of new customers, we found that we had a lot more churn, and it was because we hadn't yet built the right kind of assets to educate those more unfamiliar customers with how to get the best out of our products. And it was also a big learning, and this is obviously something now which is usually best practice in cloud, is that retention of your customers is where your success comes from, right? And our CEO Shantanu says retention is the new growth. So paying attention to your customers, getting them activated properly so they see value in what they're paying for, and then continually adding enough value so they stay happy and stay retained as your customer is a big important part of all of this as well. So that end-to-end customer journey management is what we help brands with. We run websites for people with our content management solution. We have Adobe Analytics, which allows us to analyze exactly what's going on, either on a website or through a mobile channel, or even a screen in a mall, or QR codes and this kind of stuff. So we have offline to online connections as well. And then we have tools which help customers to take this data and do audience segmentation, and then specifically the personalization to those segments. So depending on demographics, age, families, not all this kind of stuff, you'll have different ways that you personalize the experience, and that will change over time. So being able to manage this data, crunch it properly, and feed it into the personalization engine, which we also provide, all comes together as a suite of capabilities to do customer journey management. And the last piece of the puzzle was, a number of years ago, we acquired Magento, which was the world's leading commerce platform, and that's now part of the Adobe family. So a lot of brands like Aldo, for example, which does shoe shops and online shoes across Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia, is run on e-commerce or listeners in Singapore know Courts, for example. And so that's also the end of the puzzle when you actually want to monetize this customer journey. You've got that capability from us as well. So we do quite a comprehensive suite of capabilities.
That's what I find really interesting, because when I talk about Adobe, I think about Photoshop naturally, but there are just so much more components. Someone like me, it's a small business owner who has so many options when it comes to web design tools and the other stuff that you've been offering. Has it been more difficult to keep customers from looking elsewhere?
I think it has, because it always is in the tech industry. There's always an explosion of innovation and people trying to build things and startups coming from everywhere. But as I said, right, it's all about us delivering the right value to our customers and doing that in a consistent and integrated way. And it is all through all different kinds. I mean, the great thing about the Magento business, for example, is that it is SMEs all the way up to some of the biggest brands in the world that the software works for. Small, large, medium. It's a very, very good example of how we address many, many segments of all industries. Our Marketo acquisition, for example, as well, more B2B marketing rather than B2C. Again, a great example of small businesses want to use that just as much as large ones. And it's a good example of how a best practice is applicable across all sizes.
Now, I have to ask you this, because Adobe just announced that it will hike prices starting April 27th. First time in about 5 years. How do you justify a price hike off? How do you communicate with your customers about the changes that are about to come?
Oh, well, obviously we're very transparent about these kinds of things, and we do it for various reasons. Some of our customers won't be impacted as much as others. It all depends on what kind of subscriptions they have today. But it's all based on the value we deliver and the consistency of that over time, and on what our customers are looking for. And it allows us to be able to stay relevant and keep reinvesting in our capabilities to continue delivering that value over time.
Okay, I want to talk about your business here, Southeast Asia and Korea. In terms of your focus, so where is it heading in the coming years, and is there anything particularly exciting about this region that you're keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, well, I think one of the great things, and the first pieces of feedback I got when I started here just about 3 years ago now, was capability development. We've spent a lot of time, and particularly through the COVID crisis, this became even more relevant in terms of helping people to develop the digital skills. And that isn't just first timers, it's not just students. We do a lot with education organizations and government organizations as well to help young students to get exposure to our digital tech all the way through universities and beyond. But also mid-career professionals who may have been disrupted through all this COVID crisis as well. We've done a lot of programs with governments and with our customers to identify people with business skills that have the capability to learn our products as well and apply them to the business. For example, this whole digital customer experience. If you've had somebody who's been working in the field in a company, like say in a bank branch, but is now having to look for other opportunities because branches are, being automated or whatever, then their experience in dealing with customers is still very relevant in being able to understand customer journeys and get into looking at the tools of, well, what really does audience segmentation mean to my business, and what does personalization mean to that segment? Somebody with years of experience in a bank who wasn't thinking of being a digital person before is still very relevant. So we spend a lot of time with our customers on that capability development. And then what we see is the wave of SMEs across Southeast Asia. And as I said, our Magento Commerce is a really good example of that. That's a really good indicator. There's a number of companies adopting that to become brands in the e-commerce space, direct to consumer, and build their brands. And then they'll need all the other capabilities to manage the customer experience as well. So I see great waves of innovation and growth still coming out of Southeast Asia in particular. And Korea is a very large market and always has been a very good IT market as well, with a pretty solid, investment in IT infrastructure, so quite advanced as well.
Well, thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your insights, and we are certainly looking forward to more exciting developments from Adobe. So best of luck with your plans, and thank you so much for making time to speak with me.
Great, and thank you very much as well.